I'm going to parallel. I always parallel to the window frame, because wherever your eye looks, it's going to look right, isn't it? But if you make something plumb and the frame isn't, then you've got a problem. So either way, there's no winning. Parallel the reveals to the window. So we've got the same measurement running up. At the top, the window kicks in. Now, do we make the reveal straight? As so. Or do we follow the profile of the window? Do we make the reveal right, or do we make it look right to the window? It's a question, but either way it's going to look wrong. So you're stuck. Okay, it's obviously very cold, we've had snow, so I want the bonding to speed up, so I've added some accelerator in. It's half time, and you have to be very careful with it because it's pretty effective, so I've only put a little bit in. And the idea is I've got to bond this section flat, but a real good way is, because there's so many joins, you've got obviously the pouring, you've got the angles of the window. A good way to strengthen it is by using mesh in with your bonding, and this just means it's going to prevent any cracking from happening and just strengthen that whole area. Rather than just using scrim tape, I find the mesh is a lot more effective for strength and avoiding any cracks whatsoever. So you apply your bonding and then embed the mesh into it, and you're going to have a solid wall background. It's not going off. Okay, so we've started applying the plaster. We've got the first coat on the ceiling. But just a quick one, I have to mention this in the last video actually. When you are plastering to reveals, we've obviously got a lot of beadwork here. You want to be running up the bead mainly, so that means your plaster is going to be parallel to the wall. At the moment I'm just applying the initial coats horizontally, but eventually you'll want to be applying your plaster and flattening it following the bead. So the bead's running upwards, we want to flatten the plaster up and apply it in the same motion, fill in any gaps, like we've got a gap there, and just completely bed your first coat with plaster. That means it's just going to be so much easier at the later stages. So it's the same thing with the heads of the reveals. It's actually a bit tougher, but you always want to be following the bead when you're plastering the same way, because when you are doing the reveals, you can see underneath there was quite a few humps, quite a few dips. So you want to make sure that when you are plastering, you're following it all the way across. And it's a bit trickier with a head, and it can clash with the window frame sometimes, but with practice you'll get there. But it is worth doing that way. So a lot of the work's done here. We've got the first coat on and we're just flattening it. I'm just flattening with a trowel rather than using the speed skim. I find it can leave a few ripples by the second flatten, so I'm just doing it all with my carbon steel. But the real reveals have been set. Obviously all the work was done with the plasterboard, but now we're at the stage where the reveals have been skimmed and been flattened. So this is why it's so important to make sure that, again, your plaster's parallel with the window frames, and you want to make sure that the gap's similar. Like I said in the video, despite it not being plumb, it's going to look right in the window if the plaster is completely in line with the frame. It just means, in my eyes, it means it's going to look better. It's going to leave a better finish. And by the customer's eyes, when you walk in, it's going to look right to the window, which in my opinion is probably more important than making sure it's plumb or technically right. If it looks right by eye, then in my opinion, that is so much more important than anything else. So again, flattening across, but mainly following the bead. But again, trialing both ways on reveals is also crucial, because it means you're going to get them flatter and overall get a better finish. That's it. Despite some of the window reveals not being plumb, despite some of the angles not being completely clean, we made sure that we worked around everything that was already there. So your job as a plasterer is not to make sure everything's plumb, it's to make sure it looks right as you walk in, follows the windows, and everything you do fits in with the room. So rather than making sure it's perfectly level and plumb, you've got to make sure it looks right for the customer. So even though it's not always conventional what we do, sometimes you just got to work around what you got. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. But more importantly, if you want to see what happens if you can't get a wall dead flat, watch this video, because this wall will never be flat and there's nothing I could do about it. But if you watch that, then you'll realise that sometimes you can't get every job right. Click that there, and yeah, see you in the next one.